Om Ajnanatimirandasya Jnananjanashalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamahyam Dadati Swapadankitam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Utapadakammalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavascha Shri Rupam Sagarajatam Sahagana Raghunathanvitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Saitam Shri Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Shri Lalita Vishakhanvitam Sha हे कृष्णा करुणा सिंधु दीनबंधु जगतपते गोपेश गोपिका कांता राधा कांता नमस्तुते तप्त कांचन गौरांगी श्रीराधे वृंदेश्वरी वृषभानुसुते देवी प्रणमामि हरिप्रिये वाञ्छाकल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपा सिन्धुभ्य एव च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः नमः विष्णुपादाय कृष्णपृष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्तिवेदांत स्वामिनिति नामिनि नमस्ते सारस्वते देवे गौरवाणी प्रचारिणि निर्विशेषाय शून्यवादी पाश्चात्यदेशतारिणि जयो श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौरभक्तवृंद हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे 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 कृष्ण. Once again, welcome to the online second level course of Bhagavad Gita from ISKCON Mangalore, chapter 3, second session. So, in our last discussion, right? So, last Sunday, we started chapter 3 and we did 16 or 17. I think 17 slokas were done. So, we covered two sections of chapter 3. So anyone remembers anything? Say a quick recap and then we'll get into the other two sections. So anyway, anything you remember, so need not be in sequence, whatever you remember. So if you can actually answer it in one or two lines, that would suffice. Okay. Go ahead, Rajni Mataji. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna Prabhu. We spoke about self-realization, self-realized souls and philosophical or the Gnani souls.
Yeah,
And
Mataji.
but end of the day, both of them want to reach Krishna. That is the end result.
Yeah.
And we spoke about Sankhya and Buddhi Yoga.
Yeah.
That is what, like, which I told in English, like self-realized or this one. The names were given as Sankhya or Buddhi Yoga. So that will be Sankhya will be philosophical, indirect, depends on personal ends,
Yeah.
and unsure of success. But whereas Buddhi Yoga is Krishna consciousness and it is direct and depends on only Krishna, like depends on the bhakt as to how, or depends on Krishna.
Yeah.
And it's a short way of success for attaining moksha.
Yeah. Hare Krishna. Thank you,
Hare
Mataji.
Krishna.
Anyone else wants to add any other points which Mataji didn't cover? Anything else anyone wants to add in?
Hare Krishna Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Krishna preached, we are not body, we are soul. Hare Krishna.
Okay, that was from chapter 2. Hare Krishna, Prabhu. Okay. Anyone wants to share any reflections? Anything? No? Okay.
We
We'll
also did about the ladders, the yoga ladder.
Yeah, correct, Mataji.
Yeah.
Thank you. So basically, say the verses from 3.1 to 3.9. So it was work or renunciation, right? So the question was whether Arjuna's question, whether to work or renounce, right? So it was his question, and then followed by the karma kanda process. So karma kanda to karma yoga, right? So we were discussing, say, the rituals and all, right? So yajnas we went through, and then so we went through like the different devatas and their role, yeah, and how so the living entities get water and all those things, right? So we went through all those things, and through Vedas we get the knowledge to perform yajnas, yeah, and then we satisfy the devatas, and in turn we receive the required things for us to sustain, yeah. So this is just a crisp of what we discussed last time. And so before I start, right, so we know, right, there are 4 yugas, right? So do we know what were the worships which were actually prescribed in each of the yuga, sorry. So you understood the question, right? Anyone knows that? There are 4 yugas, right? And in each yuga, so what is the prescribed type of worship? Do we know that? Anyone?
I know for Kaliga it is japa.
For Treta Yuga, it was meditation. For Dwapara Yuga, it was yajnas and yagas. And for Satya Yuga, it was meditation. For Treta Yuga, it was yagas. And for Dwapara Yuga, it was deity worship, temple worship.
Yeah, correct. So there are 4 yugas, right? Satya, Treta, Dwapar Yuga, and Kali Yuga. Yeah, and Satya Yuga, so that was the usually people mention it as the golden age, yeah, which lasts for very long. So the duration of Satya Yuga is at least 5 times or 6 times of what Kali Yuga is. Okay, and even the lifespan is very large. So people, so they used to get a chance for meditation. So in that, right, in that yuga, so they could meditate for 100 years, yeah. So which is quite impossible for us to think even, yeah, because their lifespans were so long. They used to meditate. So that was Satya Yoga. That was the recommended thing to do, to be done in Satya Yoga. And when it came to Treta Yuga, right? So then it was yajnas. So at that time, right? So there were even the resources were plentiful, right, to do all those things. So, and then it got a little bit downgraded, wherein it's in Dwapar Yuga, right? So it came to deity worship within the temples. Yeah. So that was the recommended thing. And in Kali Yuga, so this is the age of hypocrisy and quarrel. Yeah. So Kali Yuga is known for dualities. Okay. So in this age, so as Mataji said, Sankirtan Yajna. That is what is preferred. Yeah. So even she might have heard, right, this verse saying that Harer Nama, Harer Nama, Harer Nama eva kevalam, kalo nasti eva nasti eva nasti eva gatiranyatha. So in this age, right, so there is no other way. In this age of Kali, there is no other way for the spiritual progress except chanting of the holy name. Yeah? So we can start the class with one round of chanting Hare Krishna mantra. So everyone can chant Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So that is what is prescribed, and then so we are doing this. At least we are on the right track, I can say. Okay, so we'll cover the next sections. Yeah. So until now we saw this in Karma Yoga. So we are in Karma Yoga, and then so mostly in Karma Yoga we are dealing with Niskama Karma Yoga. Yeah, and the first initial verses were for Karma Yoga, and then there was some section of Karma Kanda. Yeah. So for those who can't follow Karma Yoga, so that is Niskama Karma Yoga, wherein they'll should not be attached to the fruits, okay, of the work which they're doing. So in this section, right, further it is being discussed, saying that so what if, right, say if I perform all the duties, right, say here here it is like one who is in full knowledge, right, so about material detachment, and then he knows the prescribed duties, okay. So he says that in this, the question is, I don't have any material desires in life, yeah? So nor do I desire Svargaloka. So I know I'm not this body. So this knowledge one has in. So why should I perform the prescribed duties? Is the question. Okay. So this section actually answers this. Okay. So in this, right, slowly it will be realized that for the realized souls, right? So in the next the 2 or 3 slokas, right? So about the self-realized souls, right? So he doesn't have any obligations for the prescribed duties, right? Because he's actually doing the service for Krishna, right? So basically, he's self-eliminated, and then he's happy in his own self. So he's not hankering for the material desires, yeah, or sense gratification. So he's detached from all those things, and then he uses his energy towards Krishna, yeah, and then he this purifies him, yeah, and so in this way, right, and as he knows, right, Krishna is the supreme personality of Godhead, and then so he need not take shelter of any other person or devatas because he's directly taking the the shelter of the Supreme Lord. Yeah. So all these things should be discussed, and say why do say these personalities, right, who are already self-realized, why do they have to follow this karma yoga path? So they'll follow this basically to set an example. Yeah. So even though say, one is highly elevated, right? So when he is in this material world, right? So he has to perform his duties, yeah, so that others who are less intelligent or who are the followers, right, or so who observe the other person, right? So they all actually take him as an example, yeah. So and then they also continue. So what needs to be done? Yeah. Say if the leaders don't do that, right? So then say the other subordinates will not follow through. Yeah. So we'll see in the next say verses, right? So wherein the example of Janak Maharaj is being given and then followed by Krishna himself. Yeah. So we'll follow through those. Yeah. Just go through the slides once. Yeah. If I'm missing anything. Yeah, this is what self only. So he knows his position there, and then he knows the position of soul and super soul, and then he knows what to do in Krishna consciousness. So here, so the same thing is being discussed. Whatever I said, right? So here, due to being in Krishna consciousness, all impurity with the will within is cleansed. Yeah. So which is an effect of many thousands of yajna performance. Yeah. And then he knows the relationship with the Supreme Lord. He's self-eliminated and not interested in material objects. So this is the other thing also which I touched base, wherein he is not dependent. He's not dependent on discharging the duties to others. Yeah. So that is so one here, right? So without being attached to the next verse is one without being attached to the fruits of activities, one should act as a matter of duty. For by working without attachment, one attains the supreme. So this is Nishkama Karma Yoga, right? So nothing else. So wherein we should not be attached to the fruits, yeah. And then so whatever we work, so we work as a matter of duty, yeah. That too under a proper guidance. So we follow the shastras and the parampara, yeah. And so they'll be setting the examples, yeah. So so that is what is discussed here, yeah. So we'll go to the next verse. So yeah, next verse is about Janak Maharaj. So verse number 20. So here, right, as a part of this is 19 only, as a part of Nishkama Karma Yoga, right? So Krishna wanted Arjuna to fight without attachment for the result, yeah. So that is what is important here, and yeah. So this is said. This particular verse is spoken about Janaka, yeah. So why does so when Janaka was there, right? So he was a liberated soul. Okay, so he was performing. So all the he had no obligations for Vedic prescribed duties because he was a self-realized person. Yeah, but even though he was doing all the prescribed duties which should be done in his own varnashrama, yeah, just to set an example. Okay, so for others, yeah. So and in here, right, Prabhupada actually quotes one example also. So wherein he says that violence is necessary where good arguments fail. Yeah. So in here, right, he says that when they tried, right, so when Pandavas actually tried a lot of ways with Kauravas to settle peacefully, right? So to settle on the kingdom peacefully, they didn't say listen. Yeah. So that's the reason. So in those cases, right, to establish righteousness, we need violence. So it's not that violence is not at all required; it is required. Yeah. So so that is discussed here. That is one point I wanted to cover. Yeah. So kings like Janaka were all self-realized souls, and then they didn't have any obligations. Yeah. So this was just to set the examples to the coming generations. And violence is inevitable, yeah, at some places, yeah. So at not all the places, but yes. So where things do not work, right? So always you cannot be nice, yeah. So yeah, at times violence is required because else you can't actually maintain the state laws and all, right? So there will be miscreants who needs to be punished. Yeah. Say if you have, you might have actually heard the Disha case, right? So which happened, I think, some 2 years or 2 years ago or 1 year ago in Hyderabad. There. So wherein they had to be shot. So that was the ultimate thing to be done, right? So if we keep them, there is no point. So the so people of that mentality and then so of that stature, right? So violence is the only thing. Yeah. And so the next verse says, Yad yad acharat shreshthas tat tad evatro jana sayat pramanam kurute lokas tad anuvartate. So here, yad yad acharat shreshthas. This means that as the leaders, right? So whatever footsteps the leaders follow, right? So the general public also follow their footsteps. Whatever the leader does, right? So the general public also follow that. footsteps. So whatever action a great man performs, right, common men follow. Okay. And whatever standards he sets by exemplary acts, all the world pursues. So this is one of the important shlokas. So wherein basically this leader, right? So in general, is at home the natural leaders, right? So like the teachers and the parents, right? So they are the natural leaders, right? So because whatever the parents do, right, the children follow, right? So even if you look at from the small child, right, so he only enacts what his parents do, right? So we'll have to be very cautious, yeah. So there is a responsibility for the parents that say we follow the right footsteps so that we actually move in such a direction wherein say our children's or our next generation also follow through that. So that's something which we can correlate. But yes, say if the teacher doesn't follow, right, or the leaders, so not only the teachers, right, even take an example of the state king or say the ministers or whatever it is, right? So if he is not following the rules, right, so the other, the general mass also will follow his own footsteps, yeah. So that's one thing. And the other thing is, take an example, yeah, say if at all, so the teacher, there is a teacher, okay, and then who himself smokes, okay, and then if he'll go and tell his disciples or his students that say drinking is or smoking is injurious, will that have any impact? No, right? So these being a leader is different, and then being a manager is different, yeah. So there are two different things there, okay. So that's been discussed here. So we'll just see through what is there. So yeah, I think that's self-explanatory, right? So I gave the examples also, so that should be sufficient. So in here, right, after that, so now when Krishna actually descends on this material world, right, so he doesn't have to perform any of these prescribed duties, okay. So but whenever he takes the material body, right, say not material body, whenever he takes whenever he comes into this material world, right, he actually follows through all the prescribed duties. But say there is no work actually which is prescribed for him, yeah. So because he is the supreme, yeah, and then he need not follow through all this process, but he sets the example, yeah. Else, so there will be the social tranquility and all those things, right? So the progress in spiritual life, because he has come to establish all, whenever he descends, right, he descends to actually establish dharma, yeah. So whenever he comes into this material world, right, so though his body is eternal, he comes here, he performs all the acts, yeah, which are prescribed duties as per the shastras, yeah. So he doesn't have to follow through that, but yes, he doesn't, yeah. Then so why does he do? Because others follow him. So because if he being the leader, right, so if he doesn't follow that, right, so he'll set a wrong example, yeah. So that's there. And the other thing is, it is good to follow his footsteps, okay, to follow the footsteps of the Lord, but we cannot imitate him, yeah. So we cannot imitate the Lord, yeah. So the reason is, so when Lord was 7 years old, right? So he lifted Govardhan hill with his little finger, left hand, which is impossible for any of the human beings, yeah. So we should not imitate him, or we cannot. Rather, we should follow his footsteps, okay. So I believe all these things should be discussed in the coming verses. So we'll just read through this words, yeah. So, O son of Partha, there is no work prescribed for me within all the three planetary systems, because he is the supreme, right? So he doesn't have any obligation to perform any of the activities. Nor am I want of anything, nor I have a need to obtain anything. And yet I am engaged in prescribed duties. Okay. You see, when he was small, he was carrying uh, the padukas of Nanda Maharaja on his head. Beautiful picture. Yeah. So, and then this is the explanation which is being given, right? Why does the Lord need to work? Yeah. So he is the controller, he is the greatest, right? And then he is the supreme director of all the devatas, yeah. And then he is the cause of all causes, right? Sarva karana karanam, yeah. So we know that. And then, so he's eternal, right? So his body doesn't deteriorate like us, like the material body, yeah. And then there are no duties for him, yeah. So yet Lord Krishna is engaged on the battlefield of Kurukshetra as the leader to protect the distressed. Yeah. This is the motto whenever the Lord comes in. Yeah. So this is the same extension of what we spoke in, right? For if I ever fail to engage in carefully performing prescribed duties, O Partha, certainly all men would follow my path. Yeah. So if Lord Krishna would not follow, right, all the prescribed duties, then others will follow, and then that will be misguided. Yeah. So this is the same thing which has been discussed. And so in until 3.24, right, all these three verses is the same essence which we discussed. If I don't perform prescribed duties, all this world would be put into ruination. I would be the cause of creating unwanted population, and I would thereby destroy the peace of all living beings. This is basically the answer to the Varna Shankara, right? So which Arjuna had raised in the second chapter, right? So Krishna answers here is social disturbance. So if he doesn't follow, then there will be social disturbance. That's the reason he comes and then he establishes dharma. So peace and organization required for spiritual progress in life, populations are hindered. Yeah, this we actually spoke about, and even we can actually think of the other thing also, right? So like Lord Shiva, right? He drank the ocean of poison, yeah, and then we can't imitate that, right? So we can't even drink a drop of poison, yeah. So that's not possible. So that's one example which we can give in, yeah. So the next verse says that as the ignorant perform their duties with attachment to results. So this is the difference between what an ignorant and learned man does in, right? So so compares to here, basically it is between the work, okay, of a self-realized person and a common man. Yeah. So the common man works with attachment, yeah, and the learned person or the self-realized person, he only works for the sake of Krishna. Yeah. So his focus is always Krishna, and then he is not bothered about the results. So he's always engaged to satisfy Krishna. Yeah. So his objective is to satisfy the senses of Krishna. So by satisfying that, so everything would be automatically in line. So does not do anything non-conduct conducive to the development of Krishna conscious, right? So he's focused. So he doesn't do any prajalpa and all those things, right? So grama katha and all those things, right? He'll not be interested. Okay. An ignorant person is too much attached to the material activities. So this is understandable. So this is what a self-realized person and an ignorant person, right? So if you look in, so this is an in general an ignorant person, right? So who is actually thinking how to make money, yeah, and wine, woman, gambling, intoxication, all these things are prevailing. So he's actually thinking all the time, how can I actually enjoy all these things? Yeah. So on the flip side, right, the, the devotee or a self-realized person has no time to think all these things because he's always thinking of Lord Krishna. Yeah. So in place of cigar, he'll be having a dhoop stick in his hand. Yeah. So that is how. So that is how one works. Okay, when he is in Krishna consciousness. Yeah. And the next verse, right? So we're in through 3.26, right? So this is basically not to disturb. Sorry. So as not to distort the minds of ignorant men attached to the fruitive results of prescribed duties, a learned person should not induce them to stop work. Rather, by working in spirit of devotion, he should engage them in all sorts of activities for gradual development. So it is not that so the learned person, right, asks everyone to stop their work. They can stop it and then follow the other person who is learner, right? So they can see how cultured he is, and then so how what are his activities and follow through. Yeah. So this is again one of the important verses. Yeah. So wherein say about our effects of the guna and karma, right? So it's been discussed here. So this verse goes like this: Prakrite kriyamanani gune karmani sarvasa ahankara vimudatma kartam iti manyate. Yeah. So this is also one of the important slokas. Yeah. So here, right, say the here if you look in, right, so these people think that say they are the doers, okay, due to the false ego, right? They feel that say everything is done by them, yeah, but they don't know that they are under the three modes of nature. Yeah. So they are actually dancing. They are just the dancing dolls on the in the hands of the three modes of material nature. Okay. But due to their false ego, right? So they think as if they are doing it. Yeah. So that is the difference. So wherein they feel for their own sense gratification, right? So by the false ego, they feel that they are the doers of everything. But so the actual thing is they don't know actually that say all these things are due to the three modes of nature. Yeah. And so basically this is due to the forgetfulness of the Supreme Lord. Yeah. Okay. Okay. Can we mute? Sorry. Okay, I'll mute and then I'll unmute, yeah, all because yeah, there is some noise. So that is being discussed in this verse. Yeah. So this is a very beautiful verse. So a material conscious person under the influence of false ego thinks he is the doer of everything. Yeah. So he feels that he is the doer of everything. But actually, right, the gross and subtle bodies, right? So the gross bodies are made of the panchabhutas, right? Earth, water, air, ether. Yeah. So and the subtle body is what mind, intelligence, and false ego. Yeah. So all these are actually under the supervision of the Supreme Lord. Yeah. So the Lord only has created this, but we all forget that, and that is how we are into this mess. Yeah. Yeah, even this is also mostly the continuation. Yeah, so in 3.28, right? So in 3.27, actually, it is mostly about the false ego and then how we are attached, right, to the work and all those things, right? And then this is in the 3.28, right? It is just opposite to it, right? So this is about the detachment or the self-realized person, right? So in this, self-realized person knows his own identity, that he is the survivor, yeah? and then his business is to actually work for Krishna, yeah. So he needs to engage all his activities for Krishna consciousness, yeah. He has full knowledge, yeah, and then he is not trapped or so with sense gratification and all those things, okay. So one who is in full knowledge of the absolute truth, O mighty armed, does not engage himself in the senses and sense gratification, knowing well the differences between work in devotion and work in curative activities. So he knows in. Okay. He knows the differentiation and then he doesn't get entangled into it. Yeah. That's what. So he knows that he is the part and parcel and then he's the servitor of the Lord. Yeah. So these are the bewildered person, right? So who are actually fully engaged themselves in material activities, right? Okay. So bewildered by the modes of material nature, the ignorant fully engage themselves in material activities and become attached. But the wise should not unsettle them, although these duties are inferior due to performers' lack of knowledge. Okay. So one who is actually here, the word manda, right? So it is been highlighted. Yeah. So if you look in, right, so here Lord Krishna, see in the purport, right? Prabhupada writes it as manda or ignorant person of the spiritual life, right? So the lazy ones are called manda. Okay, they are only interested in the bodily connections with others or with the material senses and all those things only. Say they are not interested, okay, towards the spiritual life itself. Yeah, and we should not actually enlighten. For those who are enlightened, they should not go and agitate them. Even if you go and tell them, right, there is something. So will you join our kirtan and all those things, right? So they'll not hear also. Yeah? So even if you tell them 1,000 times also, right? So they'll not be interested in that. Yeah. So who is fully into material things, sense enjoyment, and all those things, right? So they'll say that okay, I'll do it later. Yeah. So later when I grow old, right? So that later never comes in. When you are old, so you'll be busy with eating medicines and then looking after your body. So yeah, and then this is another important verse, yeah. So 3.30. So which is actually we can say this is the essence, yeah. So wherein the shloka goes like this: Mai sarvani karmani sanyas adhyatma chetasa nirashir nirmamo bhutva yudhyasya vigata jara. So in this, right? So actually, if you look, right, Krishna actually in from here on, right, he gives little bit tinge of bhakti. Okay. So till now he was speaking about karma, right? So here he just throws some light on bhakti yoga. Yeah? So wherein he says that so you work without proprietorship and free from lethargy, and then he asks to fight. Yeah. So Arjuna, surrender all your work onto me with full knowledge of me, without desires for profit, with no claims of proprietorship, and get free from lethargy. Fight. Okay. So he's saying say you'll have to surrender to me. Yeah. So even in the 18th chapter, we'll get into those details. So here he says, here he has started. Krishna just gave him a tinge of bhakti yoga here, yeah? Wherein he says that so you should not claim the proprietorship, and then you should be free from lethargy and fight. Yeah? So that is what is being discussed. So and then here, so adhyatma chetasam is nothing but a fully Krishna consciousness person. Yeah? And nirashi means that one has to act on the order of master, but should not expect furtive results. Nirmama, not claiming proprietorship over anything. So, and Vigata Jwara is nothing but throw out, throw of reluctance to execute stern orders without feverish mentality or lethargy. Yeah? This will lead to the path of liberation. So here Krishna establishes what leads to liberation. Yeah? This is the path of liberation. Okay. So here, rather, the Lord actually orders as a commander in chief in military, right? He orders to fight for the righteousness. Yeah. So yeah, this is the purpose of Bhagavad Gita. Yeah. So this particular text is the purpose: surrender all work unto me with full knowledge, without desires. Yeah, and then don't without any results. Yeah, and then with no proprietorship, and then free from lethargy, you can fight. So that is what the Lord is telling here. Yeah? So, and then the Lord says that the persons who execute their duties according to my injunctions and then who follow this teaching faithfully without envy become free from the bondage of furtive action. So, this is what the extension, right? So, wherein he says that whosoever does this, right? Whosoever follows my injunctions in faith, right? She would be freed up from enemy, yeah, from envy. Sorry. So, this is very important. Yeah? Without faith, we can't do anything. Yeah. So we should have faith in Krishna. Then only things will work. Yeah? But those who are of envy disregard these teachings and do not follow do not follow them regularly are to be considered bereft of all knowledge. Yeah. And then few will never actually follow this. Yeah. So, and then so they'll be in their own world. Yeah. So those are the other side, the flip side of the self realized soul. Yeah? So they'll never be liberated. They'll be in the cycle of birth and death. Yeah. So even a man of knowledge acts according to his own nature. For everyone follows the nature he has acquired from the three modes. So what can repression accomplish? Yeah. So these are nothing but the swadharmas. Yeah. So which we discussed. Yeah. Yeah. And in 3.34, right? So we should here the principles to regulate the attachment and aversions, right, pertaining the senses and their objects is being discussed. Yeah. So when we come under the influence, right, or say when we are under the protection of the Lord, right, so we can control our senses and then we can move in. But if there are any attachments or aversions, right, so to the material world, so then they'll become the stumbling blocks of self-realization. So this is an example of Bharat Maharaj, say, who actually got attached to a deer, and then so when he left the body, he actually fell in a well or or in a ditch. So at the time of his death, right, he was very attached to the deer, so he remembered that deer, and then the next life he become a deer. Okay, so that's the example. And here, right, the next thing is whatever our prescribed duties are, right? So if I being a Kshatriya, right, so I should follow the path of Kshatriyas, and then I should not mix up. Yeah, and then whatever duties or whatever is our swadharma, right, so we should do it to the fullest. Yeah, but yeah, there are few exceptions say in the transcendental world, right? So wherein Parusharam, so though he was an Brahmin, right? So he became a Kshatriya, right? And then he killed 24 generations. Yeah, so we know that. Yeah. So this is. Can someone just read through this slide? Anyone can read? Can raise the digital hand? Okay. Hare Krishna Mataji, you can read. Good. Rajni Mataji.
Yeah, Hare Krishna Prabhu. For a Kshatriya, it is better to be vanquished following the rules of violence than to imitate a Brahman who follows the principles of non-violence. Everyone has to cleanse his heart by a gradual process, not abruptly. However, when one transcends the modes of material nature and is fully situated in Krishna consciousness, he can perform anything and everything under the direction of a bona fide spiritual master. In that complete stage of Krishna consciousness, the Kshatriya may act as a Brahman or a Brahman may act as a Kshatriya. In the transcendental stage, the distractions of the material world do not apply. For example, Vishwamitra was originally a Kshatriya, but later on he acted as a Brahmana, whereas Parashurama was a Brahmana, but later on he acted as Kshatriya. Being transcendentally situated, they could do so, but as long as one is on the material platform, he must perform his duties according to the modes of material nature. At the same time, he must have a full sense of Krishna consciousness. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you, Mataji. So this is what we broadly discussed, right? Yeah. And then the next chapter comes in. So who is the enemy? So what is the enemy which actually makes us to forget Krishna? Yeah, and then say why we are so materially entangled, right? So the next verses, right? So from 36 to next 43, I think. Yeah, so it will be all on the enemy, and then how, in which position does it sit, and then how do we conquer it, and then the chapter ends. Okay. Yeah, so the conquering the ultimate enemy, which is nothing but lust. Okay, so this is where so this is the enemy for us. Yeah, so if one can conquer this, then yes, say we are set right in the spiritual journey. Okay, so in this, right, Arjuna asks very important question here. So one may think that okay, from today onwards I'll do my duty steadily, right, and control my attachment. But say there is something, right, so which actually forcefully drags. So even though, so one feels, right, there is some force that pushes one to actually not perform or abandon his duty and then act sinfully. Even say you'll try, you will feel that okay, so there is some force which doesn't, and then to that actually now the Lord Krishna answers. Uh, so this is all the discussion about lust. Yeah. So this question has come in. So Arjuna asks, "O descendant of Vrishni, by what is one impelled to do sinful acts, even unwillingly?" He's asking what is that thing which is actually causing for all these people to actually suffer. Yeah, so all these things. Then Lord Krishna replies, yeah, Kama esha krodha esha rajoguna sambudbhava mahashano mahapapma vidhiyenam iha varenyam. So in this, right, he says that lust, kama is nothing but lust. Yeah. So lust is the cause which actually enforces, or so which actually from lust, the wrath is nothing but the anger arises. Yeah. So because the lust is not satisfied, anger comes in. Yeah. And then when anger comes in, so then we actually lose our control. Yeah. And then we are transformed into some, we have some illusion, and then these things continue. This is a cycle. Yeah. So, but when the living entity actually comes in contact with the material creation, right? So at the very beginning. So actually, when he is coming, right? See, his eternal love for Krishna is actually transformed into lust. Yeah, and these kama and krodha, right? So these are of rajaguna in the modes of material nature, right? There are basically three modes of material nature. Yeah, sattva, rajas, tamas. Yeah. So this will get in more details in the coming chapters. So these two things are mode of passion. Yeah. So here, so as they come into this association of this material world, right? So there, so the mode of passion arises. Yeah. And then, so in other words, it's like a milk, whenever it comes in contact with any sour thing, right? So a tamarind or lemon drops or so, right? It converts into yogurt, right? Similarly, our Krishna conscious, the eternal love for Krishna consciousness gets um, turned into the mode of passion, so wherein we actually follow through this process of lust, and then all these things happen. Yeah. So, and then here, right, the best thing would be that we actually elevate ourselves from Rajaguna to Sattva yeah, rather than being by controlling our senses, right, we should elevate ourselves to Sattva. If not, right, there are chances that we'll fall to the Tamaguna stage, yeah, so which is very dangerous. And then say we may not get a next life, we may not get a body of a human also, yeah. So that is what is mentioned here. And then the best example of using the mode of passion, right? So the anger can be used for Krishna consciousness. So if anything, if the anger can be used for Krishna consciousness, then so that is very good. Yeah. So, so because that is for the service of Krishna, right? Like Hanuman burning Lanka. So that is anger, right? So which is used in a positive way, but we should not use in another way. And then this is and the next chapters say how the lust is covered. Yeah. So one is like the smoke. Yeah. So but there is some fire. Okay. There is some fire, and then because underneath there is fire, and above it there is smoke. Yeah. So a fire is covered by smoke, but there is some fire. And then if we add more fuel or more ghee to it, right, the chances are that the smoke will come down, and then only we'll get fire. Okay. So, and the other mode, these are all the modes of covering. Yeah. And then the other one is a mirror which is covered by dust, but the actual purpose of mirror is to look our face. Yeah. And the other is embryo, so wherein you are very ignorant, you don't know anything what is happening. Yeah. So this is very basic stage. Okay. And in the part, right, the examples are being given. So wherein the smoke, right, this is the human form, okay, wherein there is some fire, okay. So we are the part and parcel of the Lord. So we have some spiritual, and we have some spiritual enlightenment, yeah. But the only thing is, we'll have to actually increase the flame so that the smoke disappears, yeah. So and then this is mostly for the birds and beasts, right? So animal life is considered in this mirror, and then trees, right? So trees are considered, are covered in the third one, yeah. So wherein so they don't have any feel of sense, touch, anything, right? So that's the examples which they have been given, yeah. So this is bringing as a beginning of Krishna consciousness. If you start pouring all these necessary paraphernalia, right? So you'll not get smoke. Yeah, these are the 3 degrees. This is the same text, yeah. So these texts are from the purport itself. So you can go through it. And the next text says that the same example, yeah, the same example of fire and smoke is being taken. But lust is such that, so it actually adds the fuel, okay. So in Manu Smriti, right, it is said that the lust cannot be satisfied by any amount of sense enjoyment, just as fire is never extinguished by a constant supply of fuel. So fire will never extinguish if you are continuously supplying the fuel, right? Similarly, lust can never be satisfied with any of the sense enjoyments you have. Okay, so that is what has been explained here. Yeah. So lust, right, is a symbol of ignorance. Lust can never be satisfied. How do we stop? How to stop? Stop feeding it and then let it die. Yeah. So how can we do this? Through devotional service and then getting detached from all the material senses. Yeah. Yeah. So this is the same thing. And here, yeah. So where does this lust arise from? Yeah. So this comes from the 5 senses, yeah, which are represented by the 5 horses. Yeah. And then the mind, intelligence. Yeah. But the first thing, right? The senses are very weak. So which are the gateways for the lust? Okay. So which become imprinted in the mind, and then the mind dwells around it. So what we'll have to do is, soul is independent. So soul is not actually lusty. So the lustiness all comes from here only. So we'll have to come from the back, and then we'll have to purify our work, so that the intelligent actually holds the rope tight and then navigates things into a proper direction. So this only can be done when we are actually controlling our senses, and then this can only be controlled and managed through spiritually, which is nothing but doing service to Krishna and chanting. So then only we can control this. Else what happens is, mind is very fickle. Yeah. And in the coming chapters, you'll even Arjuna says that chanchalam hi mana Krishna. Okay. So he says that mind is much faster than wind. Yeah. He compares mind to wind. So, and what happens is, most of the time, right, so it takes over the intelligence. So that's the situation where we are in. Intelligence is something which says which is right and wrong, but mind says we need it instantly. Eh? So that control we can only get through spiritual knowledge. Yeah. So these are the 5 senses. Yeah. And then, so see, soul is actually not dependent on this. So this lust is actually sitting on this. And then he gives the precedence also. So, how to overcome lust? So learn Krishna consciousness from Bhagavad Gita. So how do we overcome is nothing but by following what is being written in Bhagavad Gita. Yeah. So here you see the hierarchy is also given. Soul is higher than intelligence, but intelligence is still higher than the mind. So if we control this, right, so everything comes into order. Else everything goes in another direction. Yeah. Yeah. I think these are bodily functions. Yeah. We'll have to stop that. So yeah, the same thing. Yeah. So we'll have to, solution is nothing but, so we'll have to do service to the Lord and then follow through the instructions of Shastra. So this is the concluding verse. Yeah. So in this, right, the Lord says that thus knowing oneself to be transcendental to the material senses, mind and intelligence, O mighty armed Arjuna, one should be steady. One should steady the mind by deliberate spiritual intelligence. So we'll have to actually make our mind steady. And thus, by spiritual strength, conquer the insatiable enemy known as lust. So we'll have to conquer lust. Yeah. So the material life is actually influenced by lust and desire. Yeah. So the whole thing is like sense gratification, right? So we always want to enjoy. Yeah. And then that becomes the sense enjoyment. Yeah. So the enemy. So once we actually uh, follow through the services to Krishna, and then through Krishna consciousness, we can control the material senses, the mind and intelligence. Yeah. And then gradually we will actually come out of this, and then we'll get detached from this material activities, which are mundane activities, and we'll have attachment towards Lord Krishna or the services towards Krishna. Yeah. And we should not do this through artificial or speculative attempts. Yeah? So we should not control our senses artificially, or we should not renounce it artificially, but it should be done systematically. Yeah, following the shastra, following the sadhana, reading the texts, yeah, and reading the shastras, and then so we will attain the higher intelligence. Yeah, so that is actually the whole essence of this chapter. Yeah. So with this, we'll end this chapter, which is Karma Yoga, chapter 3. Yeah? So basically, we should not give up our work, whatever work is there, right? We should work, and then it should be for Krishna consciousness, or and for the service of Krishna. Yeah. And slowly we purify our senses, and then so we work towards our own identity. Yeah. And so we should not fall prey to the philosophical or artificial attempts to control the senses. Yeah. Hare Krishna. So we can take up questions if there are any. Hare Krishna, Pankaj Prabhu. Good.
Hare Krishna Prabhu, Dandvat Pranam.
Danvat.
Prabhu, I have question. When we talk about like as you said, like we must continue doing our karma. Like a Kshatriya is supposed to like do his duty, Brahman supposed to do his duties. So when
Yes,
we
ma'am.
talk about all these things, so when we see like we have the like uh, a nation prime minister, or no, we have the soldiers, they are which are constantly engaged in that in their like duty that they are supposed to do. And so
Yes, ma'am.
let's say if they since their activities like constantly being aware of what's happening around, and then they, let's say they don't chant or they don't have the time to do worship or remember Krishna, so does that mean that they would never attain the salvation, or they are never dear to Krishna? Just a question that came in my
Yeah,
mind.
Prabhu. say even Arjuna, right? Arjuna was on the battlefield, okay. On the other side, right? So he was carrying his bow and arrow, right? So you're asking about the same situation, right? So in that situation also, Krishna says that you should actually think of me and fight. That's it. Okay. So life is not that busy that we can't actually think of the Lord, right? It hardly takes 1 or 2 minutes. Yeah. So whatever activities we do, it right. So we should think of Krishna. Say if you're, say if I have Arjuna is throwing the arrows, right? So he should actually think of Krishna, right? What did Krishna tell me? Yeah? And then, so he told me to fight. Yeah? And then he is engaging in the fight. Yeah. So similarly, whatever our day-to-day activities are, right, Prabhu, say like say one may be a mother or one may be a father, right? So we'll have to take care of the siblings, yeah. So whatever it is, right? Even so, take the example of the head of the state, yeah. So wherein we'll take the example of Yudhishthir Maharaj itself, okay. So who was the emperor of the whole universe, right, at that time? So even he was following Lord, right? So he was even doing his prescribed duties, and then say he was actually doing yagnas at that time, which was the preferred thing to do, right? So there is time, Prabhu. It's not that there is no time. So there is time for everyone, but say it is up to us how we want to actually bring Krishna into our lives. Yeah. Does that answer your question, Prabhu?
Yes,
Okay.
Prabhu, it does. Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna. Rajni Mataji, Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna
In
Mataji.
verse number 29, you said that there about the mundane or lazy person, like the ignorant person for the spiritual soul should not be or should not be called by a learned person for Krishna consciousness. But then we also learn that we should try to spread Krishna consciousness.
Yeah, yeah.
So
So,
it's, I don't understand.
but one who is totally ignorant, Mataji. So, so even if you go and tell them, right, so they'll not hear you. So you
Mhm.
can actually bring people who at least listens to you. Yeah. So you try, Mataji. So if there are, because the other thing is, you should actually look at the other side of the person. So if there is a person, okay, so who is actually fully materially into the material things, right?
Mm.
Even though if you go and tell them, right, about Krishna conscious, right? So like basically you take few of the Matajis who are mostly interested into kitty parties, and then so they go to, they spend in sense gratification, right? So if you go and then tell them about Krishna consciousness, come to bhajan and all those things, right? It will not help them because they are into other things, right? So they are totally material. They are in sense gratification. So like they are interested more to showcase their jewelries, big cars, yeah, and then they they even don't take care of their families properly. So live about them thinking about Krishna. So it is for that type of people, Mataji. It's not
Okay.
for others. So for others,
The
right?
reason why I asked you this, Prabhu, is that like in our apartment, we're planning to start up a small group where we are
Mataji, you should
planning
do it.
to start reading Bhagavad Gita just like one chapter a day or a few verses a day,
Yeah, Mataji, that's a
making a
good
group.
thing.
So I don't know, like now after reading this, I don't know whom to invite, or I mean, should I just? I mean, it's I don't know, like.
You can actually send Mataji. Say so those who are interested, right? So they'll always come in, and then those who have 50-50 interest also, right? So for them you can tweak it, but there will be few who will not be interested. So for them you
Mhm.
don't force. So that's what, right? So
Okay.
um, so you'll know. Few of them, when the moment you send the message, few will be excited. They'll come in. Okay. and then few, okay, some doubtful. So them also you can slowly, you can tell them, okay, you can sit, and then you'll see if 1 or 2 days you like, and then there is no harm, right? You'll not lose anything. Yeah. So at most you learn some good words. Yeah. And then you'll know some verses of Bhagavad Gita. So there is no loss. So in there also we can pull, but there will be some segment of people whom if you go and tell also, right, it will be mere waste of time. So you
Okay.
can ignore that. So that kind of people. But yes, sending invitation is not an issue, Mataji. You can send. So, and then depending on the responses, you can see. Okay. So there
Okay,
is no harm actually.
okay, Prabhuji. Thank you so much.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Okay. Shiv Kumar Prabhu. Go ahead, Prabhu. Shiv Kumar Prabhu, you had something? You can unmute.
Hare Krishna Prabhu. I want to share my so many people seen this Facebook post about understanding Bhagavad Gita. There are so many joined a WhatsApp group, but only few have joined this Zoom meeting.
Yeah.
I want to say I am lucky.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Hare Krishna Prabhu.
Hare Krishna. So Prabhu says that there are a lot of people who look at the posts and they give the likes, but when it comes to the reality, right? So only few try to join the classes. So not all the people who are active on Facebook can come and join the classes Bhagavad Gita. So he says that it's not easy.
Yes.
Hare Krishna Prabhu. Okay, Pankaj Prabhu, one last question, then we'll wind up. Or anyone else has any other questions? Pankaj Prabhu, you have an add-on question, or your hand was raised for the last question?
Yes, Prabhu. Just one question, a little bit of intense question. What I feel, Prabhu, we know that Krishna himself says that he protects his devotees.
Yeah.
So, Prabhu, nowadays we are seeing so many bad things happening. So recently, like we are hearing of Manipur cases that have, like we were not aware, but now it has come into limelight. And when Draupadi was in helpless, so she called Krishna, and Krishna came for her help or rescue. But so in Kali Yuga, is it that Krishna would only protect his devotees and other who are innocent ones who okay, the person who is not yet Krishna conscious aware, so he's innocent, but he's or he she is not aware. So does that mean Krishna would never come to protect them too? Because are these things not avoided by Krishna? Like they are, since everything is controlled by Krishna. So are these things not in hands of Krishna? Like whatever this bad has happened, so Krishna could have stepped in. Like he could, like as God sends his messengers, he sent someone. So it could have been avoided. I sometimes think, like, let's say tomorrow if I am in some danger and if someone tries to kill me, does it mean that even Krishna won't come to help me or protect me? I always believe Krishna would protect me, but again, after seeing all these things, so there comes a lot of like empathy for them others also, like why Krishna is not protecting them. So yes, Prabhuji, it's a very really I have been thinking of this question for last 6 days, and I was waiting for the class to summon, and I asked this question actually.
Yeah. So Prabhu say here, right? So whenever the Lord actually comes on his own will, okay. So even it is written in the Shastras, right? So in this age, say he came as Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, right? So that was the secret avatar, okay, so which came in. And then whenever this irreligiosity, right? So when it becomes too high, right? So he actually descends, yeah. So and then there is one avatar which is going to come, so which is at the end of the Kali Yuga, yeah. So because these things will actually cross multiply, and then there will be a situation so wherein the burden, right, it will increase like anything, and then he'll come in the form of Kalki avatar, yeah, and then wherein he'll destroy everything, yeah. So that is there. And the other aspect is, Prabhu, say Lord Krishna is equal to everyone. Okay, so even because he is like the father, right? And the children say can be miscreants or can be good or bad, right? So, but father always look for an option, saying that he gives like an last chance or so, right? So for the people actually to renounce and come back. Okay, but yes, he does have a little bit of favor to the devotees, yeah. So the devotees, so he takes he's a little bit actually inclined towards the devotees, but that doesn't mean that he actually neglects the others, yeah. So he takes care, and then in this case, in this particular case which you are asking, right, so we don't know what is the plan proposed, and we'll have to see through, yeah, so what will happen. So even if you look, right, so there are many places wherein there are a lot of disturbances and all these things happening, okay. And then there could be, say, we don't know the Lord's plan, yeah, so what will happen in few cases, right, we may feel that why we lost someone who was a devotee, yeah, and then who was doing all the services and all, right. So if you look, right, say from the material standpoint of view, right, it looks as if say we have lost someone who was very dedicated and then who was actually doing so much work, right, for Krishna, and then we lost him, yeah. But we don't know, so what's the plan, and possibly the Lord has taken him in the spiritual world to do some service to him, yeah. So even similar cases, if you have remembered, right, say a couple of months ago in Bangladesh also, right, so there was attack on ISKCON centers, and then few of our devotees lost their life, and they were killed, yeah, so they lost their life. So yeah, so all these things happen. We don't know the plan, Prabhu. And then say if the next question is what will happen if we are in that case. So we'll have to see. Yeah, and then it's all say there are two angles, right? One is the transcendental angle, so which we actually don't know. So what is Lord's plan? Yeah, so that we'll have to wait and watch, Prabhu. So we can't actually speculate what the Lord does in. Yeah.
Thank you, Prabhu. Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. Dandavat Pranam.
Hare Krishna. Okay, we'll wind up today's discussion. Thank you all. Tomorrow we'll start chapter 4. Yeah. So we'll wind up today. Vancha kalpatarobhyascha kripa sindhubhya eva cha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnebhyo namo namah. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you, Prabhuji.
Thank you.
Hare Krishna.
Hare
Thank you,
Krishna.
Prabhuji.